Hey friends, how are you all doing? Today I thought it'd be fun to split my March wrap up into potentially two videos because so far already this month I have read quite a lot of books, mainly audiobooks and ebooks I think, as I've had a quick little look around, and to save you like a really long video I thought let me just split it in half. So I'll put all the statistics and everything like that in the last video when it would have been definitely the end of the month and I can actually tally and wrap up those sort of details. But for now I thought it'd be cool to talk through the first around 8 books and just have a little bit of a discussion on those. So the first book I listened to, I don't know why I wrote ebook when it was an audiobook, but it was Losing Earth, The Decade We Could Have Stopped Climate Change by Nathaniel Rich, read by Matt Godfrey. This one is published by Picador back in 2018 and it's basically an account of how close we came to signing binding treaties for global warming in the 1980s. I think a lot of it was taking place in the United States and basically fell through for whatever reason. I ended up giving this overall a 1 out of 5 stars. Unfortunately, it just wasn't the type of journalistic non-fiction that I enjoy reading. It had me too frustrated about men in power not doing anything to help anybody else and our planet in specific, and the way it was written wasn't captivating, so I just had all this frustration building up and not like a valid educational digest for it. You know, I couldn't feel like, yes, I agree with the writer, because really it was just kind of factual. There wasn't much emotion in it, which I mean, yeah, maybe that was the point, but I felt like we couldn't like bitch together, if you know what I mean. That's not to say it wasn't a good book. It definitely had a lot of factual information. It was just really dry for me and lacked the personality that I enjoy when it comes to journalistic non-fictions. Another audiobook I read was The Marvellous Land of Snurg by Veronica Cosenteli, read by Stephen Fry. This was actually based on like a classic that inspired The Hobbit actually, by E.A. White-Smith. And we follow the adventures of the accidentally parentless children running away with their dog when they discover the land of Snurgs. I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. This was super fun, joyful, whimsy and just pure silly. I think this is my first time listening to Stephen narrate a book, but I've always wanted to. He's just got such an engaging narration and I definitely enjoyed that. I think that was one of the main things I really loved. Even when I zoned out of the storytelling, his voice brought me back. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, 3 out of 5 stars for overall rating and general plot. I really did enjoy the narration particularly, and I thought it was cool that it inspired The Hobbit. And I drew a little dude. I drew the picture of the Snurg and as I saw it I was like, yeah, I can definitely see how that inspired the character of The Hobbit. Another audiobook, this time a thriller, YA thriller, and this was Dark and Shallow Lies by Ginny Myers Sane, and it was read by Emma Ashton. This one's published by Penguin Random House in 2021, so it's a relatively new release. So Gray returns back to her small town, claimed psychic capital of the world, to find her best friend has gone missing and nobody seems to want to answer any of the questions surrounding it. I ended up giving this a 5 out of 5 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed this. It was super angsty, dark, mysterious, and I absolutely devoured it. My latte is still very hot. The twists were unexpected and kept me hooked for sure. 9 or 10 characters that were referred to a lot. They weren't necessarily all the main characters and they weren't necessarily all the side characters. They were called the Summer Children. So because there was a lot of names released in a quick succession, I found it a little bit difficult to keep track of them all, but luckily it was only like a handful that we were really focusing on, so I didn't have to feel like swamped and like I couldn't focus for too long. The characters themselves were super unsettling, their acts of violence shocking, surprising, but yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this one, and I think this is the first book of the month that I had some quotes for, so I might as well read you all 3 quotes that I had written down. The first of those being, anything we lose comes around in another form, but that doesn't mean we don't grieve. The second one being, I wish you could breathe out hurt the way he breathes out smoke. And the third one being, what's past is prologue. I thought that was so cool. It's such an interesting, like, it really made me ponder and think on it. I really enjoyed that. Next up, my first physical book that I managed to finish up over March was Howdee-haie by Samuel Fisher. This is literary fiction adult, kind of about climate change and people, really. It's just a character study, I would say. It's taken place over 24 hours. Howdee-haie is set in an alternate present. I think it's set in like a fictional, I don't know if it's actually a real place or not, fictional town in Essex, where the world is waking up to the fact that they're living through an environmental disaster when snow starts falling and doesn't stop. And it's basically like the Antarctic but in Essex, and pretty much all over the world, I think, although you don't get a lot of outside interference. You just really settle on this town. And the opening scene begins where a murder has taken place, and as I say, it's 24 hours following that about the people in the town that didn't stop this from happening and the fallout from that. I gave this one a 2 out of 5 stars. I felt like a lot of what interested me, being the murder and the early starting of the climate change sort of pandemic, if you will, happened off page. So all the things that I was kind of intrigued about going into this wasn't really the main focus. It was definitely there, and it was definitely a heavy theme for it, but I wanted to see it from the start, if you know what I mean. So because of that, I felt like I couldn't connect with any of the characters. I didn't really know them to the degree. I didn't go through those intense early feelings with them. I just got jumped in to the middle of it all, and so I didn't really have any loyalties or care for their future or anything like that. And I also didn't feel the need, the real compulsion to pick this up whenever I put it down. So it did take me quite a while to get through this. I was hoping to read it within 24 hours, but yeah, I ended up doing a reading vlog that I included this book in. It is the reading books out of my comfort zone, so yeah, I'll stop talking about it now, but I will include the quotes because I don't think I talked about the quotes in that video. So, he realises he has believed that she can't die if he doesn't accept that she is ill. Magical thinking. That one rings so true. It's quite a painful one to read. I guess you never know which out of the hundreds of things that come out of your mouth each day will stick. It's so true, and definitely an example of why you should be more careful in the phrases and the choice of words that you choose to voice. You know, you never know how that's going to come across, and yeah, people can be in control of, you know, how they perceive things, and that's their own thing to own, but you don't know what kind of state of mind everyone's in, and how a slip of the tongue, something that can be quite insensitive but you don't mean it in such a way, can really affect some other people, you know. Yeah, so there's that, Howdee-haie. As I say, I've got a reading vlog for that. Back to the ebooks, I read an e-arc through Book Sirens for a short collection of stories. This had 3 short stories reflecting humanity's fears, and this was called The Terror Triptych or Triptych by Casey Fallon, and it was YA horror, releasing 28th of January 2023. And this one was another lower rating for me, unfortunately. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. It definitely was a fast read that ended better than it started. The first short story I really didn't vibe with, but the second and third tale captured this kind of creepy edge that I was definitely after when I requested the arc, thinking that was going to be the vibe, but as I say, it just kind of fell a bit flat. However, I will say it will be a forgettable book for me. I don't really remember the titles right now of each of the individual stories, let alone any deep emotions that I might have felt whilst reading it, limited though they were. And next up, another audio book, Vada by Imogen Binnie, and this is, I believe it's a re-release. I think it was originally released in 2013 or maybe even earlier, I'm not too sure, but they say it's the book that really brought out trans fiction, as in not translated fiction, transgender fiction, let me be specific. So we are following Maria, a trans woman in her 30s who's having a bit of a midlife crisis. She's trying to retain that punk ethos whilst drinking herself into a stupor. Most days she can't really function, go to work, maintain a relationship. She's currently going through a breakdown of this relationship, and she basically is in need of a big change. So we're just following her. Again, it's another kind of character study. and the people that she meets along the way. So this one I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. I wasn't keen on the storytelling style, but I did enjoy the story, if that makes sense. It was a bit of a strange one because it read more to me like a non-fiction, and I think I would have preferred it had it have been just a straight up non-fiction, because then I could have really invested in it, because I was at times second guessing. I don't know if it was somewhat autobiographical from the author's perspective, but it kind of threw me for a loop a little bit at times. The way that you were reading it, it kind of threw me off. But I really did enjoy the interactions between Maria and this kind of tumultuous relationship that she was in, and then meeting the random people on her way, this road trip, it was a really good not even a coming of age, it's almost like a re-coming of age, if you know what I mean. After this midlife crisis, it's kind of finding yourself again, where you belong. But the ending, the ending was just so too open-ended. I've said this time before, but I do not like open endings. I don't like it when it's just abrupt. But luckily the author's note, again in the re-release, explained about why that was done. I think she had quite a bit of like commentary on like what happened, why was it ended that way. So it was interesting to at least get thoughts behind the reasoning there, and it made me feel a little bit better about such an open-ended, abrupt finale, basically. But yeah, that is Nevada. Second to last for part 1 of the wrap up is again another audiobook, and that is Beast and Beauty Dangerous Tales by Saman Shanani, narrated by Polly Lee, and this is YA fantasy fairy tale retellings published in 2021. And we have 12 fairy tale retellings with unique twists and perspectives, and this one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. This is my first read by the author, but I've been wanting to read The School of Good and Evil for such a long time. I think I have the first 3 books. Pretty sure it's a quartet series, isn't it? There's like 4 books, but I have 3 books at least. I've been meaning to get to them for the longest time. So yeah, when I picked this up, I recognised the author's name, but I didn't match it up with that book beforehand, so now I'm even more intrigued to pick it up. But yeah, there was fantastic retellings, and just quickly, some of my favourites included Snow White, Beauty and the Beast, Bluebird, Cinderella and Peter Pan. And I have a couple of quotes from these stories. So one of them is, "He might be a monster, but he's very much a man." And the second one is, "My son's birth was the last bit of magic my body could take. I'd grown up once and for all. I couldn't live between worlds any longer." And that one was so good. I don't want to spoil which story it came from, but it was perfect, and it matched the story perfectly as well. Lastly for this video, this book I'm not going to talk about too much because I've actually done a full review for, but this one was sent my way digitally by the publishers for the Black Crow book tour, and that is The Mentor by Lee Matthew Goldberg. And I really did enjoy this one. This was absolutely fantastic, and as I say, I've got a full video on YouTube, and it's coming out around the time that I'll post my review to Instagram. So my reviews are already out, but as my book tour stopped, I'm going to be posting it to Instagram, just my written review. And I think it's like the 23rd. I think it's the 22nd that the actual tour stop is going live, where I'll post my written review onto Instagram. And the 23rd, which I think is the Saturday, is when I've got the video ready to release on the channel. So yeah, that is it for today's video. I hope you've enjoyed, and I will catch you, if not the next one, then part 2 of the wrap up. Bye, thank you for watching.